express what's called a complete thought. And we'll explain what each of those are. So the subject is the what the sentence is about, right? It's the who or what, right? Again, what is this sentence about? That's our subject, and that's going to be, again, really important. If we don't have that, we don't have anything to write a sentence about. The verb is the action word. So we'll write these. It's the who, what. The verb is the action word. That's really key too, right? If that we don't say what the who or what is doing or what's happening to it or something like that, then we don't have a sentence either. So that's going to be the action that either somebody or something is taking or is being taken to it. And then the last one is a complete thought. And what a complete thought does is just make the sentence, again, sound complete. It's a little bit self-explanatory, right? But I always tell students the best way to kind of understand and sort of test the water, if you will, if something or a sentence or potential sentence expresses a complete thought, is to ask yourself, okay, if somebody said this out loud to me, would I be left going, okay, and, like finish the sentence, right? And if that is true, that you'd be left saying that, then it's not a complete sentence. It didn't express a complete thought. So I always like to give the example, Stephen ran a marathon, which is not historically accurate. So Stephen ran a marathon. All right, that is a complete sentence, right? Because it takes a subject, me in this case, right? It says that I took an action, I ran, and what did I run? I ran a marathon, right? So there's my complete sentence. That's a complete thought. It's just a statement, right? A statement of something that happened, or in this case, didn't happen. So Stephen ran a marathon. Now, if it lost the subject, you'd be looking at ran a marathon. And you'd be going, who ran a marathon? What, like who or what, who ran a marathon? That's loss of a subject. Now we could say, Stephen a marathon. Stephen, what a marathon? Did he run? Did he walk? Did he jog? did he quit the marathon? What was the action that was taken? We don't have an action, right? And then last one, a complete thought. If you added a word like, let's say while, like meaning one thing was happening while another was happening. If you said Stephen ran a marathon while, someone said that out loud, you'd be going, while what? While Johnny sat on the couch, while it rained, while, there's infinite possibilities basically, right? So this isn't a complete thought. There you're left going, okay, what, right? So there you go. So that's just a great example of the three kind of concepts within sentence structure, okay? All right, let's jump into probably the next most important thing when we talk about the writing section, which is punctuation. How are we going to look at sentences and how are we going to punctuate sentences? How are we going to punctuate sentences? It's pretty important. Both end of sentence and in sentence punctuation, right? So first we'll start with end of sentence, right? End of sentence. End of sentence punctuation is really three main options. Well, we can say four, really. We've got the period, the exclamation point, the question mark, and the ellipses. And bear with me because I know these seem pretty self-explanatory, and most of the time they are, right? And honestly, the SAT doesn't really test on end of sentence punctuation too often, but you very well may see it because it is a possibility and it is something they can test. So a period, right? A period is most obviously going to go at the end of a statement, right? And that's the key, right? So a statement. And remember, that can be a statement, and the key with this one is where you can get confused. Is it a period? Is it not? Is if we say that, let's give an example. Amber asked the question of how long, Amber questioned how long this session was going to take. And you go, oh, it says it was a question, right? And it even kind of included the question, how long this was going to take. But the entire sentence is the statement that she asked the question. Does that make sense? So it isn't really the question. Now, if it was a question mark, if we wanted to use a question mark and make it not a statement, we could go, Amber asked, and then put it in quotations, the exact question that she asked. How long is this session going to take? Question mark, right? Because we included the quote, the question itself, right? So that's the key. And then we'll jump down actually kind of to the question mark, is it has to be the question itself, not just the mention of someone asking a question. Because if it's just the mention of someone asking a question, that's still a statement. Saying that someone asked a question is a statement, which means we use a period. Okay, so that's probably the most common way students get tripped up as far as end of sentence punctuation, because most of the time it's pretty easy to know if something's a statement or a question or an exclamation, or a sort of exclamatory proclamation that would need an exclamation point. So that's like you said, the biggest kind of trip up some students have. So now to jump to the exclamation point, then an exclamation point is sort of a proclamation, right? A proclamation or a declaration. And it's just something, it's really just something said with excitement, said with excitement. And this one is really just making sure you kind of read the context. If someone is yelling to catch up to a bus in the, in the passage, then yeah, it's going to be an exclamation point. Like if they yell out, wait, that's going to be an exclamation point, right? That's not just, because, it's a statement saying, yeah, wait, but you can imagine they're not just going, oh, wait for me. That would be just a statement, just a period, right? But if it's got excitement, if it's got emphasis, if it's some sort of declaration, I love this, park, I love this game, something like that, it's going to be an exclamation point, okay? And usually the sentence context will usually tell you pretty well if you're going to need an exclamation point. The last one is an ellipses, and the three dots, kind of the dot, the kind of universal symbol for waiting, kind of that there's something else to come. And that's exactly what an ellipsis does. It actually intentionally creates a fragment. And a fragment is just a sentence that's basically doesn't have everything it needs to be a complete sentence. It doesn't have the subject, verb, and complete thought, right? And it does that sort of for a sense of ambiguity, for a sense of like you have an idea maybe what comes next, but you don't know. All right. You'll very rarely see an ellipses, but I wanted to include it again, just so that you know it. So if you were to see the three dots out of the three periods, that's called an ellipses, and it means that we're sort of intentionally leaving a cliffhanger, right? So that's about the only case we would want to see a sentence stay as an incomplete sentence, okay? All right, let's go to the next slide. So now we will do within sentence punctuation. So within sentence punctuation. All right. So the first and most common form of within sentence punctuation is going to be the comma. The comma is going to be the right answer more than anything else. It's not always the right answer, obviously, but it is definitely a more common answer, and it's going to be an answer choice on probably every problem, at least having a comma. So let's go over some of the ways that we use commas. So first, the ways that we use commas exclusively, like we're going to use commas in this way, in these ways only. The first one is to separate a list of 3 or more items. Right, so to separate a list of 3 or more items, I have to wash my car, clean my sink, and walk my dog. Okay, so there you go. The list of 3 or more things. That's the 3 things I have to do today, kind of thing, right? So there you go. That's one way we can. That's really common, right? We already knew that in most cases that commas are used to separate a list. All right. The next place that we use commas are really to introduce introductory information. Okay. Introduce introductory information. You go, what do you mean introduce introductory information? What I mean by that is something like this. In 1492, Columbus set sail for the New World. Okay, so again, it's an introductory information, right? In 1492, comma, Columbus set sail for the New World. So that's again a place that we're going to use a comma. So now, before we go any further, I want to have a quick conversation about these things called clauses. And I actually should have done this first, but I want to have a quick thing. Clauses are basically things that stand to be sentences on their own. And we have some called independent clauses. And then there's dependent clauses, right? And if we think about it, independent means like something can be something on its own, right? Like if you're independent, you can do something on your own. Well, an independent clause, that's just something that could be a complete sentence. And that's what we'll refer to it as from now on. We won't call them the dependent and independent clauses because I know that can be a lot. And there's really, there's no points on the SAT for knowing that they're called that. So it doesn't really matter. So we can call them complete sentences. And then dependent, right? It means like you need something else or you need someone or something else or you're dependent on it. That's going to be an incomplete sentence because it's dependent on something else. It can't be a complete sentence in its own right. Okay. So from now on, we'll call them complete and incomplete sentences. But no, what we're really talking about is independent and dependent clauses, right? Things that could be or couldn't be complete and incomplete sentences. But for ease sake, we'll just call them that. All right. So let's jump back now. Let's jump immediately back. I'll give you a second. Do you have any questions about that? Because I know sometimes the idea of clauses and stuff can be weird. If not, you can just stay muted and I'll keep on. All right. So let's jump back then. All right. So now another place commas can be used, and really the one I just gave you, the introductory information one, is actually an example of this next one. But what it is it separates an incomplete sentence from a complete sentence. Separates an incomplete sentence from a complete sentence when the incomplete comes first. And think about it. That's what we just saw in the last one. Introductory information is exactly that. It's an incomplete sentence followed by a complete sentence. So in 1492, incomplete sentence. It's obviously not a whole sentence on its own, right? Columbus set sail for the New World. Columbus set sail for the New World is a complete sentence. So again, incomplete, complete. So I always like to give students a sort of a template, right? So it would be incomplete, comma, complete. All right, so that's sort of our template here for this one that you can follow. So we know if we see an incomplete sentence and then a comma and a complete sentence, that's a correct answer choice. That's a good way of combining an incomplete sentence first and that's followed by a complete sentence. It's a great way of combining those. Okay. All right. So next we're going to see where we can use commas or dashes. Commas or dashes. And when I say a dash, I refer to this, right? The kind of just the horizontal line, the subtraction sign, if you will. So the best place to use commas and dashes, the most common place you're going to see it used, is to separate parenthetical information, also referred to as unessential, separate parenthetical or unessential information from the rest of a sentence. All right. Separate parenthetical or unessential information from the rest of the sentence. You go, what do you mean by parenthetical or unessential information? Like, what does that even mean? So if I said, I'm going to verify a spelling real quick. All right. To separate, okay, so when we say unessential information, sorry about that. When we say unessential information, what we're referring to in this case, like unessential usually means like you don't need something or it's not necessary, right? And it means a very similar thing here. But what it means is it's information, oops, information we could take out of the sentence that does not change the meaning of the sentence. So we can take unessential or parenthetical information out of a sentence, and it doesn't change the subject of this. I mean, it doesn't change the meaning of the sentence at all. Okay, and maybe takes out some useful information. It doesn't mean it's worthless. That's what I want you to understand, is that unessential or parenthetical information isn't worthless information. No, it can enhance a sentence. It can make a sentence better. That's why it's usually there, but it's not essential. It doesn't give the sentence meaning, right? It just adds something extra, right? So a great example of this would be Dr. Seuss, born Theodore Geisel, is one of the most famous children's authors in history. All right. So again, great. Dr. Seuss, comma, born Theodore Geisel, comma, is one of the most famous children's authors in history. That's great. And knowing that he was, and you see that parenthetical information, I separated it with 2 commas in this case. It's great that Dr. Seuss was born Theodore Geisel. It's cool that that's his real name, right? That his real name isn't Dr. Seuss. But it does, if I take that out, it doesn't change the meaning of the sentence. Me just saying Dr. Seuss is one of the most famous children's authors in history has the exact same meaning as me saying Dr. Seuss, comma, born Theodore Geisel. You know what I mean? It does, again, cool information, added information. It's not worthless, but it just isn't needed to keep the meaning of the sentence. Okay, so that's a great example of that. And now another way you could have written that same sentence, though, and that's why I said, remember, this is commas or dashes interchangeably, is you also could have done that. I should say, no, not that, this. You could have gone with 2 dashes like that. And that is perfectly fine. And sometimes you will see that 2 dashes setting off a set of parenthetical information or unessential information. What you will never see is a mix of a comma and a dash to do this. You will never see Dr. Seuss, comma, born Theodore Geisel, dash, or vice versa. Never, ever. So that is a good thing. So do not use one of each. Do not. All right. Not use one of each, okay? And there actually is one more place that commas or dashes can be used. So if you're kind of taking notes on this, I would leave a little bit of space. But I'm going to introduce it under kind of a different moniker. I want to introduce it to you in the context of where you may see it. So we'll kind of put a pin in this of where we can use commas and dashes, because there is one more place. But yeah, so that's pretty much it right there, okay? Next, let's jump to, all right, let's jump into the next one, which is going to be, we'll actually save that one. Let's go with a colon next. All right, using the colon like that, okay? So really it's a bunch of different ways that we can use the colon in this same way, but it's really only one way. And that is, I should say one main way that we typically see it, is basically when we have it doesn't necessarily have to even be 2 complete sentences, but when we have a complete sentence followed by something that explains it or expands it. And what I mean by that, and the thing is, though, and keep in mind, and that, I think a lot of students forget this sometimes, is that thing that expands it can be like a lot of different things. That can be a list, that can be a quote, just a statement or idea. It can be a bunch of different things that seek to explain or expand that, right? So, and then honestly, the most common is a list. You'll very often hear like, these are the things we needed to pack. or we needed to pack several things for our trip, colon, deodorant, a toothbrush, toothpaste, and so you'll have this list separated by commas, but it's introduced with a colon. So it would be, we needed to pack a lot of things for the trip, colon, and then I immediately go on to tell you the things that we packed. See, that list of things that I'm saying now explained the idea or expanded upon the idea that we had to bring a lot on the trip, right? So there's a few different ways we can see this, like I said. So if I said Stephen had 2 important tasks, colon, and now guess what? I'm going to tell you those 2 important tasks, right? I say that I have 2 important tasks, and I'm going to now say them. So Stephen had 2 important tasks. Clean his car and walk his dog. We'll go back to that example. There you go. So I said I had 2 important tasks, and then I immediately told you those 2 important tasks. Okay, so that's one thing. Another one that I will use that example, or the hockey team needed to pack a lot, or pack several items, colon, sticks, pucks, pads, skates, and jerseys. Boom. Okay. So again, that list expanded on the idea that they had to pack several items because I immediately explained what those items were. I told you explicitly. Okay. So that's the most common way you're gonna see a colon. All right. Yeah, that's pretty much the main one, honestly. All right. So now let's jump, because we're kind of getting to the last one here of this. Let's jump into how we are going to basically take a look at ways to deal with 2 complete sentences. So how to combine 2 complete sentences, because there are several ways to do this. All right. The main one, and let's see, we'll use the same example over and over here. All right. So we'll say, we'll give the example. Stephen knew the assignment would take a while to complete. He started it at school and finished it at home. There you go. So that's 2 complete sentences, right? That's 2 separate sentences separated by a period. Now there's a few ways we can approach this to rewrite this, right? Because there are definitely going to be questions that say, how would you effectively combine, or most effectively combine, the 2 sentences there? Okay. So there's a few different ways, like I said, that we can do this. So the first one is going to be where we use a semicolon, right? So the dot and the comma, right? The semicolon. So that one is going to look like this. Stephen knew the assignment would take a while to complete. Semicolon, sorry. He started it at school and finished it at home. All right. There you go. So in this case, a semicolon just replaces, and it would really be, of course, I put space for emphasis on the semicolon, but it would really be that. The semicolon just replaces a period. That's all it does. And that's just the function of a semicolon. But the key is, and this one, and I'll kind of write the template like I did earlier for the other one. It's complete sentence, semicolon, complete sentence. So it's literally just like a period. But the key here is that there is no fanboys. And what fanboys are conjunctions. And what fanboys actually stands for is for, it's an acronym for the words for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So that's what fanboy stands for. And it means that when we use a semicolon, we don't need any of those words to help our sentence, right? We don't need to say, Stephen knew this assignment would take a while to complete, semicolon, and he started it at school. Nope. Nope. If we have a semicolon, we do not need any of those fanboys words, okay? So definitely make sure you're familiar with the fanboys words, all right? And the idea of the fanboys words, that when we talk about fanboys, we're talking about conjunctions. We're talking about things that connect sentences. But when we have a semicolon, we don't need anything to connect it, all right? So, our fanboys conjunctions, you'll see in other cases are going to kind of serve as our almost like Bluetooth, like like this sort of external connection for sentences. I want you to think of, okay, if fanboys word is Bluetooth, well, then a semicolon is like actually just plugging it in, right? Like if it's like headphones, it's like plugging in the cord of the headphones. It's like it is a direct connection. We don't even need the Bluetooth because we're plugged in. Okay, so complete sentence, semicolon, complete sentence, no fanboys. It literally just replaces a period. Okay, so that's one way we can see two complete sentences combined. Now, another way, though, is to use a comma or a dash, actually. So we'll put comma or dash. Complete and then comma or dash. And I'll put it in parentheses. And then, because what it actually is, this one we do need a fanboys. So the fanboys would go right there. So we'll delete the one that says no fanboys because in this one we definitely do. So if we use a comma or a dash, we will need a fanboys word. So if we had to think, and you can put this in the chat if you want, which of the fanboys words that I just said would probably be best in this context? Stephen knew that his assignment would take a while to complete. Blank, he started it at school and finished it at home. Would it be for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so? You had to take a guess. What do you think would be best? I just want to hear what you have to say. And you can put in the chat or say it, either one. Somebody. Which of those fanboys words works best? And if you don't know, that's okay. And then you can even put that in the chat. I'm not really sure right now, honestly. I don't know. It's kind of a new concept, maybe, hearing them referred to as fanboys. Yeah, perfect, Deborah. Absolutely. So, yeah, this is kind of a cause and effect. I knew they'd take a while to complete, so I started it at home and then I started it at school and then finished it at home. Absolutely. So I would absolutely say so is a good fanboys to put there, and we do have to put it there because again, it's not the semicolon case. This is like our Bluetooth headphones, right? We don't have the direct plug-in. We're gonna need that connector, and so does that perfectly. Yep, very good. All right, so that's those two. Yeah, so that's going to be the most common ways you're going to see two complete sentences combined. Yeah, that's going to be good. The last way, though, would be, and it wouldn't be great in a context like this, but technically you can sometimes use a colon to do that, but it's really rare. And again, in that case that you did that, the second complete sentence would have to explain or expand the first one. That's always the key with colons, is that the second part has to directly explain or expand on the first one, okay? Or emphasize it in some way. So this is going to be the key, though, right here, what we have here, to combining two complete sentences. These are going to be the most common ways. All right, so definitely, again, make sure you know what those fanboys are and which one doesn't need a fanboy in the semicolon, and then which ones do need the fanboys, which is the comma or dash. All righty. And then let's see. So I think, okay, we have one more punctuation I want to do, and then we don't want to make this video too terribly long because we want to make it something you want to go back and watch again. So we will cut it off after this one more punctuation I want to look at, and then one concept that's going to be really important as you apply these, because sometimes you're going to have sentences that are two answer choices that use correct punctuation. They're both correct as far as punctuation, but the concept we're going to look at real quick is going to tell you which one is the better of the two answers and which one truly is the only correct answer, because there is only one right answer, of course. All right, so the last punctuation we want to look at, though, is the apostrophe. Goodness, apostrophe, goodness. All right. Spelling today. Apostrophes. So apostrophes are usually used in two, and they're kind of that floating comma, right? That air comma, if you will. So apostrophes are usually used two places. They show possession, but then they're also used in these things called contractions, right? The kind of words that are combined into one word with an apostrophe. So they're used for possession, and then they're used for contractions. And Let's start with contractions. It's a little bit easier, right? So something like should have, of course, replaces the word should have. So that's one place we use them. And then the other one is possession, to show possession. So if we said, let me actually write these, or I should say type them. If we have the kid's toy, that's possession, right? The toy belongs to that kid. But now I want to introduce you really quick with apostrophes to the tense, or I should say the plurality of some of those, the subject and then of the noun, right? So if we have the kid's toy, and this obviously isn't a complete sentence, so I didn't really even need to, it's sort of just a phrase, a clause. The kid here is the subject, right? That's going to be the subject, and technically the kid's toy, but the action is possessing the toy. So the kid is really the subject. There's a few different ways we can have this phrase. We can say the kid's toy. We could say the kid's toy. We could say the kid's toys, and then we could say the kid's toys. And you're going, what is all that, right? There you go. So that's 4 different phrases right there, and they all actually have a different meaning. So, and when we'll kind of look at that real quick, okay? So when we talk about, and this is just places we can use apostrophes. Places we can use apostrophes. The first one we have to look at. So the plurality of the kid, and that says everything to us about where we put the apostrophe. So if we have one subject, we're going to use apostrophe, then the S. Now, if we have more than one subject, it's going to be S, then the apostrophe. Okay? Like that. So the kid's toy, the kid apostrophe S toy, that's one kid. And then, of course, one toy, because it just says toy. Okay? So blow singular. The kid's S apostrophe toy, that's, that we'll just call it 1 plus. That's, or I say 2 plus, really, 2 or more, right? Because it's just more than 1. Oh, that's great. There we go. We'll call it 2 plus then. 2 plus. And then toy, again, is just one singular toy. Okay. This one, the kids, so apostrophe S, one subject, one kid, toys, 2 or more toys, right? It's the toys that are plural. And in the last one, S apostrophe is 2 plus kids, and then toys is 2 plus toys as well. Okay, so that's sort of plurality when we're dealing with items of possession. Okay, so that's really important. And then contraction. So that's the 2 places we can use we can use apostrophes. All right, and then the most famous example of using apostrophes then, and the one that's going to probably help you improve your score most rapidly, is the difference between its and its. Okay, this one's like an instant score booster, is the difference between its and its. So its, ITS versus IT apostrophe S. Typically possession is going to use an apostrophe, right? Not in this case. The possessive is this one, ITS. And then IT apostrophe S is the contraction. It is. Because you think about it, you go, okay, why is one, why is the other? Well, if it is didn't have that apostrophe, how would we know that it's supposed to be it is? Does that make sense? Because the possessive, it's not really it's not needed. Yes, it's usually a rule of English, but in this case, if you think about it, we can understand that we're talking about a possessive without an apostrophe. There's no way of us knowing that it represents, that IT apostrophe S represents it space, it is, without that apostrophe. Okay, so that's the contraction, it is. So that's going to be super important. Definitely make note of this, because I know students say this is on every test pretty much. most times. And if you ever take the ACT, even it's on that even more heavily than the SAT, from what I've heard. So yeah, students say it's on there a lot, but it's definitely on both. Okay. And it is definitely something they will test. So if you had an example of each, ITS, just the possessive would be like the dog drank its water, versus ITS, of course, it's such a sunny day outside. It is such a sunny day outside. Okay. And then the last thing I want to tell you as far as it's is that this right here will honestly usually be an answer choice, ITS apostrophe. There's no such thing as ITS apostrophe. That's not a word. ITS apostrophe is not a thing, and it is always the wrong answer, okay? Wrong. Always going to be wrong. All right. So, boom. No IT apostrophe S. No, I'm sorry, S apostrophe, I should say. No ITS apostrophe. We know that ITS, no apostrophe, is possessive, and then IT apostrophe S is it is or it's. All right. So that's the key for that, for it's versus it's. And the last thing I want to hit really quickly is just the idea of concision. Concision. And what concision is essentially saying what needs to be said in the least amount of words possible. All right. So that's what you're going to look for on every single writing problem. You're looking, one, does it use the correct punctuation? Does it do what it says it needed to do, that the question said it needed to do? Yes. Ooh, is there two of them? Then pick the one that does so in the least amount of words, right? That does everything we need to as quickly and as efficiently as possible, as streamlined as it can possibly be. That's concision. And the opposite of concision is something called wordiness. And you will see a lot of answer choices that are correct as far as punctuation, but are unnecessarily wordy and include, again, just more words than we need them to. They say what we need to say, but they just say it in a way that's more complicated than it has to be. So keep it simple. Of course, number one is make sure that it uses the rules correctly, because it's not like the shortest answer is always the correct answer, but the shortest answer that does what we need it to do, that is the correct answer. Okay. So that was really the last concept I wanted to show you. Do you have any questions for me? And I'm actually going to stop the recording now. So those of you who are here, we don't have to worry about the recording.